Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, a sullen, sulking mass of sensitive scar tissue, here to talk to you today about Venus square Chiron. Now, the cycle of Venus in Chiron is connected to a healing journey that we must embark on in terms of the wounds, scars and traumas that we have related not just to our own sense of self-worth, self-esteem, personal beauty, and the pleasure that we are able to take in just being ourselves, but also what trauma and baggage we have related to our ability to share that with other people in relationships. And this is relationships of any kind. Platonic friendships, connections with family members, but definitely also, perhaps more than any other sphere, in romantic partnerships, where, because any true sharing of affection or love involves some degree of vulnerability, if we want to have pleasure, it's it's easiest to make love with someone if you've taken your clothes off. The armor that we must relinquish in those moments of closeness and intimacy with someone else also means that it's the setting where we are going to be most sensitive, where we are going to be most vulnerable, where things are likely to cut us and hurt us more deeply, and where things will be taken more personally in terms of the commentaries that they offer about our own beauty and self-worth than they may do in other situations. So it's important to note that when we're talking about going on a healing journey with a particular connectedness to a part of ourselves, we don't embark on journeys, on healing journeys, unless we're aware that there is something wrong, that there is some part of us that feels broken, hurt, fragmented, that is bleeding or suppurating pus. There is a recognition that there is something on us that, like a cracked piece of pottery, isn't fitting in with the whole that we have constructed out of ourselves, and we have to scrabble around looking at those pieces that have shattered and fallen over the floor due to our past experiences and figure out, how can I feel whole again? What can I do with these shattered parts of myself? How can I reassemble the fragmented jigsaw of a part of me that feels incomplete? It is a truism that we cannot truly love someone else until we love ourselves. And like most of these platitudes that we like to throw around that are so profound and yet which get repeated so often and without any actual deeper digestion or awareness of them, it's a plain truth hiding directly before us that rarely actually gets implemented or investigated in a deeper way. The problem with these phrases when they become idiomatic and part of the common parlance is that they are so taken for granted that we don't feel the need to investigate them, we don't feel the need to deconstruct them or analyze them and ask them, well, what does that actually mean? It's not just questioning, is this true? But why is this true? On a deeper level. To investigate this truism further, I'm going to explore the nature of harmony through a musical analogy, because harmony is a word that we associate with Venus, and in romantic or loving or enjoyable connections with someone else, we hope to combine our own unique energies with someone else's unique energies to make something that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's almost like when you're baking a cake. It's not the individual ingredients by themselves that make that tasty, tasty dessert. It is the way in which they all accumulate together and synthesize to create something that is new and magical and palatable to the taste buds. And we also want relationships to be palatable to us in some way. I will combine with you, you will combine with me, and together we will both experience some kind of pleasure, some kind of wonder, some kind of joy, safety, security, and rapture that we could not achieve alone. And yet, in our Aquarian age, there is a strong expectation that we somehow should all be able to experience that rapture alone and in isolation. You know, there is this feeling that we all have to be hyper-independent, that all joy and worthiness should come from us alone, that, you know, we are fine and sufficient unto ourselves, and by all means, some people can be. But I believe there's a Tibetan aphorism that says not everyone is meant to be a snow lion. Not everyone is meant to be this lone wolf lurking around the cold steppes of the Himalayas. Many of us and human beings are intrinsically social species. We are not necessarily designed to be alone, to be these islands that wave to each other across these vast collective oceans in which we are refusing to drown. We do long to have some kind of connectivity, and with all of the burdens and responsibilities and difficulties that are placed upon us in the world, it makes practical, good, logical, sound sense that we might band together in couples or groups to lighten the load so that we're not just having to carry it all on our own. But if we go back to the musical analogy for a moment that I interrupted myself from making with my beautiful, beautiful tangents. You know, when I am existing by myself, let's just say I am putting out a particular note. I'm putting out a middle C, shall we say. And then I meet a beautiful lady, and she is an E above middle C. And when we come together, we make a beautiful major triad. We are no longer single notes. We have come together to produce a harmony, to produce a chord, to produce something that has its own special resonance. There is this music we can hear when we are together, and which, when we are apart, becomes faint or disappears completely. And if we like the music we make with someone else, then we can fall in love with them. We can say, this music is so special that I want it to be in my life at all times. But this is where we talk about the love we experience with other people stemming from our self-love. Because the music that we are putting out, the notes and harmonies that are inherent in ourselves, will by necessity intermingle with the music that is coming from other people. And if our sense of self-worth is making us feel like we are unlovable, that we are unworthy of someone else's time, care, affection, and attention, then the resonance of those poor beliefs and that poor relationship with ourself then has echoes and ramifications and difficult sonorities that will connect with the music we are receiving from someone else. So sure, in that first analogy there was a nice balance of a C and an E to create the beginnings of a C major triad. You know, find a nice have a nice threesome and we can make the full chord. But if I am feeling that I am unlovable, that I am unworthy, that my music by itself has no value, other people's music is great, my own music sucks, the music of me sucks, then that is going to be heard in the music I try and combine with anyone else, because it's almost like you have a guitar or a piano where the strings are out of tune. And if you are out of tune with yourself, then that dissonance will then be felt in any relationship that you try and have, because your dissonance will automatically make the harmony anyone else is trying to achieve with you dissonant by connotation, you know? If you've ever played with more than 2 or 3 musicians before, you can have 5 musicians all together and 4 of them can sound amazing. Get one who's out of tune and it can make the whole thing sound like shit. So harmony is a very delicate process, and that's why we say you have to be in harmony with yourself first. You have to have some kind of comfort and ease and pleasure in your relationship with yourself first. Otherwise, whatever dissonance you were trying to mask or silence when someone else's music is inevitably going to creep into the composition you make together. Sure, during that first honeymoon phase, you might be able to mask it, or you might be able to, you know, put on a front so that you're singing someone else's song. But But at some point, when things start to get real, when you get closer to one another, when you get closer and more intimate with one another, those little parts of your private manuscript, of your secret melodies that you've been trying to hide, will come to the surface. And it's that point when you are making this shared symphony together that you both have to look at one another and go, well, what the fuck's happening here? This symphony was sounding great. You know, we got through the first movement, that riotous allegro, and we were just having a great time and having sex all the time. But now we've got to the andante movement, suddenly everything's become sad and sorrowful and difficult and wounded and guarded. What went wrong? So this is why in the relationships we have, if we have certain glaring insecurities or unresolved wounds or difficulties or presumptions about our own lovability or the nature of relationships and lovingness that is actually possible with us, even if we go into relationships hoping that we can somehow run away from those things, we will invariably attract exactly those relationships which will mirror those insecurities and feelings of inferiority back to us, because you can't hide from music. You can't hide from a bum note. It's always going to make itself heard at some point. We will always attract those who are in harmony with us, even if the harmony we are putting out is a disharmony. And then, therefore, we experience disharmony in our relationships that, like a dramatic dissonance in a Bach cantata, is ultimately looking for some resolution. But many people, once they find those discords in the symphony they are creating with someone else, go, oh, well, I don't like this music anymore. The relationship must be doomed. Let's go out and find someone else where these difficult issues don't arise. And yet they find someone else and exactly the same issues arise. So there is no escaping music. For some people, they might experience that as karma, when actually it's just about being honest with your own composition and who you are and what sound and sonic environments are quintessential to where you are at this stage in your life. But the reason why the Venus-Chiron square can be such a fraught, difficult moment in our own personal progress that we are working towards to find some kind of healing and resolution for the pain that we feel in connection with ourselves in our life is so difficult, is because one of the truths of Chiron transits is that in order to heal what is wounded within us, we have to confront the thing that hurt us to begin with. And so if we have poor opinions of ourselves and have a sense of being unworthy and unlovable and unworthy of care and affection because of the damage or the neglect or the abuse or the mistreatment or the misunderstandings that we experienced in previous relationships, we can also only heal those wounds by having relationships again and by trying to heal the pattern to which we've become addicted and have turned into some kind of fated precedent that always has to repeat itself. And this is why I think of the square as being the shall I stay or shall I go aspect, because it's almost like Venus is in there looking over at Chiron saying, okay, well, I need to start connecting with people and getting close with people again and maybe having some kind of relationships if I want to move on from the baggage and trauma that I have with relationships. However, I'm afraid to do so because I'm worried that any new relationships or connections or moments of intimacy that I have with anyone following on from this point will only take me back to the vital point of suffering and pain and misery that I'm actually trying to move away from. So there's the feeling that we have to do something to develop and work on ourselves and move on from the pain of the past, and yet at the same time there's that fear of making that existing pain worse. You know, it's bad enough just sitting there festering and lingering and wallowing in the misery that we have so far. But what if we go out and we experience the same rejections, the same problems, the same inferiority complexes reflected back to us time and again, and then we feel even more hurt than we did with, because that pain is existing upon the roots of the pain that we've already planted. Those scars are being painted upon a palimpsest of scars from our past, and it's almost like, well, you know, better the wounds I know than the wounds I don't. You know, better than having just one pre-existing, prevailing, predominant pain than adding any discords to that already violent, tumultuous music that is causing so much jabbing sensations within me. So square aspects represent moments where we kind of reach a breaking point, a crucial turning point, where we realize that we have to make some kind of separation from the past, where we have to make some kind of risk or venture if we're to move on. When we have those train aspects, things feel like they flow, like they take care of themselves, like everything just somehow works out. But with the square, it's usually the sense that either we need to initiate some kind of step towards healing our wounded heart, or the universe is going to push us into it in some way if it hasn't done already. And it may just begin by doing that. But either way, it's usually one of those aspects where dramatic events take place in the outer world, where we rediscover our own wounds and therefore are pressed to investigate them more deeply by the people that we meet out there in the outer world, rather than just within our own private psychodramas. To explore this aspect a little more deeply, let's introduce the main players we have here. We have Venus in Cancer on the one side, cute little Venus in Cancer, and then we have Chiron in Aries on the other side, and we can explore why the conflict and the dissonance between these energies can cause the crises that we experience in our relationships, in our own lives. And Chiron in Aries is wounded basically because it is afraid that it is not as powerful and as strong and as macho and as full of aggressive initiatory drive as it would like to feel. The energy of Aries inherently wants to feel that it is strong, it is powerful, it is capable, it is independent, it is capable of operating upon life and making things happen, of saying, I have a will, I have a dream, I have a desire, I have a vision, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make that vision happen. And because I'm so strong, because I'm so persistent, because I'm so fiery, because I don't have the fear of giving people a push to set things going, things will conform to the inner vision that I have. My goals will be achieved because, damn it, I will make them be achieved. And Chiron in Aries secretly worries that actually it's not capable of making its desires manifest in the world. It's worried that it doesn't have enough passion, that it doesn't have enough drive, that it doesn't have enough confidence or self-conviction to make things happen, because confidence is of the very essence of Aries. It says, if I truly believe in myself, if I truly trust in my own power and integrity and authenticity, then I can make anything happen, because I have that personal, indomitable will that cannot be overthrown. No matter what defeats, no matter what difficulties, no matter what other obstacles I encounter, it wants to feel that it can push through them. And like I said, Chiron in Aries secretly feels that actually it's not strong, it's not potent. In fact, it feels like it's impotent, that in some way anything it tries is going to fail. And yet one of the ways in which Chiron and Aries will try and overcome this nagging insecurity of there being something basically wrong at the center of yourself, which means that any lance you try and thrust in to penetrate in life will always break, is by overcompensating. It says, okay, if I feel weak, then I'm just gonna exaggerate my strength. If I feel insecure, then I'm just going to make myself overblown and overconfident. If I'm worried that actually I'm feeling needy and sensitive, then I'm just going to block and mask and obscure oral recognition of that side, so that if anyone does approach me, if anyone does make me feel sensitive and wounded, they won't see it. They'll only see the part of me that is strong and fiery and which has no problem fighting or snapping at anyone who does get too close to my sensitive points. So it's like the dog that has a wound and you say, oh, let's stroke the poor puppy, and instead it bites you in the process, because it's kind of saying, fuck you, I'm not wounded, because it is wounded. And yet the square with Venus is so nagging and difficult for that Chiron and Aries to process, because it reminds it of the fact that actually it's fed up of being the independent hero who's constantly on the move, on one quest to the next, and always having to fight fight to prove his self-worth, to fight to prove that he matters. He thinks, do I always have to be just going from one battle to the next? Can't I have a little love, a little softness, a bit of care to help me have some downtime between the constant strife and struggles and exertions on the battlefield of life? Can't I just call a time out for a moment and, have a nice, moment with that beautiful damsel in distress over there who will take off my armor and who will stroke my hair and who will bake me cookies and make me feel loved and safe and beautiful, and as though I can just have a breather, a rest from flexing my muscles all the time. And yet at the same time it's terrified of putting itself in that position, because that's just when the bastards will get you. That's exactly when they will hurt you. But also, if you meet the nice damsel in distress who's very cute and affectionate and loving and gentle and sweet and has sparkling blue eyes and long golden blonde hair, and who knows exactly the right things to say to you and exactly the right atmosphere to make you feel at ease, if she helps you and she takes off your armor, that's when she will see the parts of you that you are hoping all of your macho and braggadocio will prevent people from seeing. Everyone else in the world they're believing that Aryan front. They're believing that because you're strutting down the street, or because you're acting optimistic or funny or buoyant or lively or charismatic, that, oh, well, this person's okay, because people who are wounded, that they look sad and miserable, but Chiron and Aries looks like he's having a great time. He looks like he's strong. He looks like, a fun person to be around. He can't have any secret nagging difficulties going on behind the eyes. And yet Chiron and Aries knows that if it gives in to the soft love and affection and the care that Venus in Cancer is trying to offer it, that's when she will see the parts of him that he hates, the parts of him that he feels are ugly, that are deformed, that are malformed, that are wrong, that are monstrous, that are disgusting, that are poisonous, which anyone will be lowered by simply coming into contact with. And very often people do feel like that about themselves. Sometimes that is put onto the body. We may feel that our bodies are inherently ugly and lacking in beauty, that they are not something that someone else could ever want to touch or to stroke or to be near or to make love to, or which they would find pleasure in just looking at. And yet someone may feel that what they really want more than anything is for someone to find their body beautiful, to say, wow, look at this person, they're hot stuff. And yet, because they believe that their body is inherently ugly, having someone else come near to their body and say nice things about it creates this cognitive dissonance. If they believe that they are inherently ugly and someone else is coming along and lavishing them with praise, then there's something not adding up there. The self-vision is not matching up with what the world is saying to it. And on some level, that Chiron almost wishes that someone would tell them that they were ugly, would tell them that they were worthless, that no one could ever find them attractive, because even though that hurts, it's just confirming what they feel on the inside. There is that confirmation bias there. Whereas if someone comes along and says, oh, you are beautiful, you are radiant, you are amazing, you are a goddess, you are one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen, to someone who hates all of those things about themselves, that dissonance means that something has to change. That dissonance means that one person's vision has to be altered in order for some kind of harmony or reconciliation to be achieved. You know, someone may hate their belly or their thighs or, you know, their nose or something, and then they meet someone who says, my God, I love your nose. It's so cute. It's so adorable. And it's like, no, don't look at me. Don't look at the part of myself I'm hating, that I would like to draw attention away from as much as possible. And yet that challenge is coming out from the universe precisely so you can look at that and say, well, maybe that part of me is worthy of love. You know, perhaps someone is insecure because they think they're overweight, and someone else happens to love the extra chunkiness of their body. And then someone comes along and says, well, actually, I love your curves, I love your squishiness, I love your softness, I love your roundness. I actually find that really, really sexy and beautiful and attractive, and it's the thing that you know, pulls me towards you and gets the fire moving in my veins. And if someone dislikes themselves about them, then they project their own self-disgust onto the other person. They say, oh, no, I'm fat and disgusting. How could you like that? You must be disgusting too. And it can be the rejection of someone who is trying to love us, because really, we are rejecting part of ourselves. And if we have to see that part of ourselves reflected in the other person, then we can have those knee-jerk responses where we say, I want no part of this. I would rather something that doesn't challenge me to grow, doesn't challenge me to have a better relationship with myself, than have extra attention drawn to precisely what I don't want other people to see. The problem is, if you bring that self-hatred and that self-loathing and that self-disgust into a relationship, then that self-hatred and self-loathing and self-disgust ends up becoming part of the pattern and the tapestry of the relationship. If there's not a willingness to accept the healing balm and love that someone else is giving to you, then that partner may end up feeling that same hatred, loathing and self-disgust for you, because you've given them no other choice. They tried to give you love, they tried to give you healing, and what was a sincere outpouring of affection and admiration and erotically charged compassion from them has been denied. And if they're not allowed to love you in the way that they want, then Venus's Cancer is going to sulk, it's going to get passive-aggressive, it's going to think, well, if me being sweet and loving and kind and caring and compassionate to you is just going to constantly meet with these big, you know, rebuffs where you bite my head off just at the time when I think I'm being sweet, where suddenly you come over as all, you know, macho and independent and I don't need anybody, I'm fine on myself, just when I'm feeling like I actually really need you, then what's the point in me trying, you know? Next time I won't tell you something sweet, next time I won't do something loving, and then instead of these moments that could have brought us closer together, that could have helped us both feel like we possessed deeper self-worth, instead just makes both of us feel somewhat dissatisfied, because your self-loathing has made it hard for me to love you, because it's built this defense mechanism and this rigid carapace around anything that I could potentially reach in you, because you're so afraid of having those wounded, sensitive parts of you touched. It means there's nothing else I can actually touch, you know? And if I can't touch you, what can I do? So, again, one of the big challenges sometimes of this aspect is recognizing that sometimes people may love us for exactly what we hate about ourselves. They may admire and see precisely what we would rather disguise or keep hidden. that just when we're trying to show the world how macho and confident and hyper-independent we are, there come along these psychic, sensitive, intuitive people who actually can sense exactly all the suffering that we have underneath. And through having attention brought to those sides of ourselves that feel poisoned and wounded and crippled and unworthy of love, there is that challenge to try and direct our own self-love towards them, to try and find worth and some kind of beauty in what we once gave up as being a lost cause in ourselves. And that can be really difficult. It's a difficult thing to sit with that pain, to let someone touch us where we feel so bruised and delicate. And yet it's precisely that touch we need if we are to heal and become more than the Frankenstein's monster that we may feel we are inside. Anyway, I've exhausted myself with that. I need to go lick my own Chironian wounds now, unless any of you want to lick them for me. Anyway, if you have your own Chironian romantic baggage that you'd like to speak to me about, you can message me at thestarsunraveled@outlook.com. You can support me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thestarsunraveled, or you can follow me on Instagram at astrology and underwear. Be kind to yourself, but most importantly, when other people are offering you love and kindness that you secretly and deeply crave but are afraid to receive, let yourself receive it. Don't be the tough guy all the time. Self-care sometimes also means receiving other people's care and not feeling like you always had to do it yourself.